As you're starting to wrap up the year and enjoy the holiday season, I'm taking a look back at 2024. And I'm sharing not only what I learned throughout this past year, but I'm trying to look at what insight you can use to start preparing for your 2025. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. Well, welcome to the end of the year, and it's the holiday season. 2024 was quite the year, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it both personally and professionally. And today, I'm taking a look back at the year and giving you some insights for you to think about during the holiday break and help you make 2025 an even better year. Joining me to talk about the year is IPC's podcast production partner and the founder of Haze Studio, Matt Haze. He's there always with me and helping me put these together. We're going to have a little conversation about last year, what happened, and some of our great guests and what we should look forward to next year.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. We got a lot on the plate to get to today. We're going to talk about some of the previous episodes throughout the year and give some guidance to our advisors so they can have some insight and maybe some things to listen to during the holiday break to kind of get their brain in the right place for the upcoming new year. We're going to talk a little bit about things that have been going on in the business world. But first, let's talk about you and the big news that happened in your life this year with the IPC acquisition. Canada Life acquired IPC. So, what has that been like for you, this process, this entire year? And now looking back on it, and now that everything is closed and gone through, how do you feel about all this? What has this been like for you?
It's a good question, and one that I've, talked to a lot of people about throughout the year. Of course, an adjustment as every entrepreneur. This is always the ultimate goal, right? Everybody starts a business so that at some point, you're going to progress to doing the things you like to do, getting rid of the things you don't like to do. And this transaction with Canada Life has allowed me to sort of redefine my role into the things that I really love to do, but also try to avoid the things I don't like to do. So it's been a transitional year, but not one that came suddenly.
Mhm.
All entrepreneurs, this should be something that you think about all the time. You should think about what would be the right circumstances. Uh, what would I love to be spending my time doing? And what are the things that really, drain my energy and take those things away? And so now, having closed this transaction, having been working with these great partners, you're starting to really see a clearer picture come out of all of that.
I love that. How has that felt? The IPC has been your baby for so many years and decades that you've built this up from just you as an advisor to this massive organization. So what has this felt like for you? What has this process given you?
To be honest, I think it's given me freedom. It's given me contentment. It's given me, it is one thing to your point. It's been my baby, and watch your
Mhm.
baby grow up and being through the trials and tribulations that every entrepreneur goes through. And trust me, there were a lot of trials and tribulations but we built a good organization full of good people, a great culture, I think a great business model. And now it's an opportunity to take that baby and make it even bigger. Like, say now it has to grow up, I guess, is the best.
Yeah.
So from a business point of view, I don't think that there could be any better thing to happen to IPC than to be part of a much bigger organization. As we come together, we'll be well over $100 billion of assets. We'll be probably 2,000 different advisors across this great nation of ours. So that's good for the company. But for me personally, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast would wonder what's that like, to your point, to give up your baby.
Yeah.
And it's not really giving up my baby. My baby is, at the end of the day, what my mission was always, from the very founding of the organization, is to help advisors build a better business. What this allows me to do is just more of that. I don't have, necessarily the Luckily, got out of the sort of president and CEO duties, which, in this day and age are primarily, all about meetings, organizational meetings, administrative meetings, regulatory meetings, board meetings, all probably necessary, but not what you would call the most exciting way to spend your day. Whereas, redefined, what I get to spend my time doing now is what I love, which is working with advisors and helping them build a better business. My day is just basically talking to my friends who are in the business, asking them what's troubling them, where they want to go next, and then offering assistance and guidance to actually getting there. So that's the great part of my day. The other part of my day is to deal with and mentor the people in the organization, both on the IPC and the Canada Life side. And my area of expertise is how do you strategically build a world-class wealth management firm, and that's all of us have the same mission. So I get to sort of help mentor what does that mean to you in your career, and what should you look at, and where should you go next. And then from that, it's just really, all over strategy. Spend time just thinking. That also is something that you probably don't get as much to do as an operator because you're always doing something. Whereas now I get to have periods of time where I just get to think about what is next for our industry and where should we be focusing our attention, and then working with the people who can make that happen, make it happen. Matt, it's been a challenge, but it's been a good challenge.
I want to hear more about these conversations you're having with advisors and this next role. We'll talk more about that here in a second. But one thing you mentioned earlier too was that this is giving you freedom, and that's always been one of the things you've wanted to do. So, what have you done with this freedom? I know travel has always been so important to you. Where have you where have you been this year? What have you done with this freedom? Because you have the ability to take your laptop and pretty much work wherever you're, whether you're in Toronto or Miami or the farm or the complete other side of the world. What has that been like for you this year?
So, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike, because that really has been, the overriding goal is freedom. It's not money. Money helps. Don't get me wrong, but it's really freedom. And now that I don't have sort of those day-to-day responsibilities, it allows me to sort of unplug. And to your point, I can still work, but I can work from anywhere. So started the year with a great tour through Asia, and I can't believe that I'm the age that I am, and this is my first time traveling through Asia. It was eye-opening. I loved everything about it. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the food. Uh, I love just their what I call their hustle. There's always something going on there. It's always busy. I love that part of it. And so, got to see like 17 different cities in 6 weeks. Then being down here in Miami during the wintertime, doing day trips, going to, when I call day trips, I call them like weekend trips, going to Austin, Texas, going to um, Atlanta, going to Charleston, like seeing all these cool cities over a long weekend. Once again, have the freedom to do that. And then just recently, all through Europe, in London, down to Italy, over to Cyprus, and then Turkey. And then very soon I'll be heading off into Africa for a month-long tour of Africa. So this is really my end dream, was to be able to have that freedom to travel. So it's been great.
It is spectacular how we can have a device and take with us wherever we go, anywhere in the world, and still be able to have calls, to work, to think, to process, and then still be able to see the world. We don't have to be locked in that office anymore. And now you get to live that dream, which is just absolutely amazing.
Well, you reimagine what freedom is. Like before, when people would retire, they'd have to retire because they would be, they're either in the office or they're not in the office. And if you're not in the office, you're not working. These days, you can pick your hours, you can pick your times. As the technology allows you to be in the other side of the world and have a meaningful conversation with somebody. So technology has completely changed our view of what retirement is, or at least slowing down or moving to the next stage of our careers.
Also, I believe you're working on a book now too. You're becoming an author.
That's right. Well, to be honest, this will be my third book. The other two, though, were more on, the topics of investing, and they were like, 2 decades ago. I don't even know if their copies still exist. But yeah, I was so motivated from the podcast and all the great topics we had and all the great guests that we had on the podcast, that I thought this would be a great book. And so actually, I just got the first draft in last week. And so I hope to have it sometime next year, and hopefully it'll add some value to people's lives.
Well, congratulations on that. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of conversations about this over the next year. So let's get back to that new position that you're in right now with IPC. You are helping advisors more. You are having more conversations. You're really being an advisor. You're guiding people through while building their business. So all these conversations that you're having with advisors, what are you hearing them talk about? What are some of the problems, some of the questions they're asking? What are these conversations that you have with advisors on a day-to-day like? What do you talk about?
Well, I think the conversations really haven't changed all that dramatically. It's just, putting more into the context of where they are in their business cycle. There's certain conversations I'm having of the advisors who are just scaling up. So, of course, when you're scaling up, who is my client? How do I get more clients? What do I do about prospecting? Where's the right niche that I should focus in? So, there's lots of those types of conversations. Then there's the more mature businesses, the ones who have gone through, they're past the startup stage, and now it's all about how do I scale up? How do I find the right staff? Am I giving the right experience to my clients, and where can I step up my game? And what is the technology that I should be implementing? And then finally, there's those that are I'm gonna call in the maturity or the sort of final stage, which is, all right, I want to do what you do. I want to I want to capitalize on the business that I have built. I want to spend my days doing the things that I love to do. I want to travel more. How do I go about that? What things should I put in place to make me relevant at some point so that I can step away comfortably and guilt free uh, to focus on the endeavors that I love? So, yeah, all day is a different day. I love these conversations because it all depends on where they are at the stage of their business.
And one thing that we've been trying to do with the podcast throughout the year, and we're going to continue to do in 2025, is take these things that we're hearing that advisors are looking for, this guidance, this information, and bring on other advisors that have surpassed that mountain, that have grown their business, that are maybe even just starting to learn and learn from them and from other experts across all different varieties, all different walks of life that can share some insight with advisors to help them grow their business. So let's talk a little bit about who we've talked to so far this year, because we've had a lot of fascinating conversations, starting with episode 47. We started the year off with Keita Deming talking about turning strategy into action. Tell us a little bit about that podcast. What did you love about it?
Well, I think that was a great way to start the year because everybody, including myself, we think about, okay, it's a new year. And of course, this is New Year's resolution night. And we all know that those things never work. So I wanted somebody to come on the podcast to tell us, how do you put goals into action? How do you actually make it happen? What are the things to, as I said, it's got to tie to, and what we learned was, is it really got to tie to your overall arching objectives. Using mine, it was freedom, right? So if the overarching goal is freedom, then under that, what are the things that I have to do to make that happen? What are the actual tactics? And when you can define those tactics in light of that big goal, then it's all about measurement. It's all about how do you track it, what do you track, and making adjustments for things that work and making adjustments for things that don't work. I think it was a great way to start the year on the right foot, which is not just writing stuff down and saying, I'm going to do this, is actually putting a plan in place that will almost assure that you're going to achieve, if not all of your goals, at least the majority of them.
And I think that's also a good thing to listen to this time of year now, as we're starting to think about 2025. All that information is still valuable, still helpful. It's something we can use now. We have some great podcasts to kick off the year to help get you motivated and all. But while we have this quiet time, this time of year in December is probably a good thing to listen to and kind of get you in the right mindset. Speaking of people that made a plan, got it done. Episode 54 with Ron Harvey talking about succession planning. We have so many advisors within the company and across Canada that are looking at making that transition out of their business, starting that next chapter of their lives. And Ron really talked a lot about, the way to do it. And I mean, he set up a plan and was able to do it himself.
Yeah, I love Ron. Ron is the epitome of great professionalism in our business. He's a guy, and he really tells you something that a lot of people find difficult is how do you make that transition? How do you find the right person to take over your business? How do you step away? How do you introduce them to the clients? And I thought Ron gave us some really good insight, and it's an especially important topic right now because our, key demographics across our industry is one where almost 50% of the assets are held by advisors over the age of 55. So almost half of the advisors currently are going to need a succession plan in the next 5 years. And I think Ron really laid out some of the pros and cons and considerations in a very thoughtful manner that we can all learn from. The other thing that I love that Ron really emphasized is your responsibility to your family to make sure that you maximize your price, but also your responsibility to your clients to make sure that they are left in the right hands, that whoever you transition to is going to look after your clients as well, if not better than you did. And those are important considerations when you're going through this, and certainly one that I had to go through as well. So I can appreciate everything Ron had to say.
Obviously, you've gone through this before on numerous different occasions over the years. So, you personally know what that feels like. One of my favorite series that we did throughout the year was our conversations with the regulators. So, tell me a little bit about what you learned from these conversations and what advisors you think could gain from going back and listening to these conversations with Karen and Andrew.
Matt, I'll tell you what, if I went back 30 years and I asked advisors what their number one complaint was, it would have been regulation. If I would have went back 10 years ago and asked them what their number one complaint is, it's probably regulation. 5 days ago, regulation. 5 days from now, probably regulation. And so I thought it would be great to actually bring the people who are making these policies and bringing regulation into the Canadian marketplace, and whose responsibility it is to think up these things and enforce them. And to be honest, the insight I had was, that A, they're just people doing a job, and B, what they're asking is not all that unreasonable. And I think if you listen to both episodes, you'd have to come to the same conclusion, which is, securities law is there to protect the consumer. And it's also, more importantly, to keep a level playing field. Like, you want everybody playing by the rules. And if somebody's not playing by the rules, you want somebody to, basically shut them down, or at least make sure that there is an even playing field. The rules are very clear. What you have to do is very clear. You just build it into your business systems, and it's almost a nothing. So instead of resisting all these new regulations and thinking it's a big burden, just think of how to systemize it so that you can satisfy them as quickly and as efficiently as possible, so that there is that level playing field. Both worth a second listen to, because I think that there's some real insights into those.
Yeah, you can either complain about it or be proactive about it. And I loved how they also said, we have the ability for you to share your voice, to ask questions. We have panels, we have advisory boards, so that you can be part of the solution and be part of the change that advisors might want to see, which I absolutely love that they welcome people on in and try to make this not just that we're the big bad government people, but no, we want to work with you. We want to make sure that we understand everything that's going on. They want people to become part of that conversation.
A very good point, Matt, is that, a lot of people complain, but when I ask, well, what are you doing about it? Are you, writing in? Are you voicing your concerns, or offering other alternatives to these things? Yeah, more than often I get a head shake. So this is our industry, and we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our clients to make sure that there is uniformity in those rules and everybody's following them.
One topic that we always talk about every single year, no matter what, for a bajillion years now, is technology. How is technology changing everything? And yes, it does feel like that technology is changing not only with the technology we use, but changing the world that we live in so rapidly. So we've had a lot of conversations this year with a wide variety of people about technology tools for advisors and just how to utilize it, from social media to AI and all. What have you learned from the technology conversations we've had on the podcast this year?
Well, it's interesting, Matt. What I've learned is that technologies is very incredibly broad term that is ill-defined. Anything that sits on a computer seems to fall into this category of technology, and that goes everywhere from AI to what type of software should you be using to social media. And yet, what is technology? And I think we've had some good guests over the year. One of the ones that come to mind is episode 55. We had Brad Jordy of Conquest Planning on the podcast, and he talked a lot not only about planning but AI. And AI was a hot topic last year, of course, right across the board, and what it could do to help advisors. And I don't think that advisors are in any danger, at least, of being replaced by AI. But what they need to do is look at how can we utilize technology as a tool to help me be more efficient, right? So they use the example of financial planning where it thinks of different scenarios that will continue to refine the proposals that you give to your clients on a regular basis, so that you don't have to. It'll think about the scenario so that you don't have to. And that's a great use of time. So if you can get technology to take away the time that you are spending on things like that, what it allows you to do as an advisor is spend your time on where you can create great value. And that's in the relationship, and that's the getting to know your clients. And really, that is the thing that can never be replaced. So my recommendation always with technology is ask yourself, how can I utilize technology to free up more of my time so that I spend it in front of the clients, developing deep, meaningful relationships with them? And I think that's what we really learned. I can go through the various applications, but I think really what we've learned is where can we use it to be more efficient?
I love that, and then that gives you more time then to be able to build what you love to talk about more than anything, having a great client experience. So, this is something you're so passionate about and talk about this year. What have you learned from some of our guests, or what have you changed with your insights when it comes to offering a great client experience?
Well, we've had so many good guests talk about client experience and so many great business models that we can choose from. It's funny how we had a sort of a session when we got together in Montreal, the whole organization. And one of the things that was memorable to me is we had a group of young advisors all together doing a brainstorming session. And as they were there, they were trying to build the best business and having the best practices. And one of the topics that came up was, what type of investments do you use? What is the pricing on there? Who do you do your financial plans? There was a lot of these types of what I'm going to call technical questions, but nobody was talking about or asking questions about how do I create a great client experience? And it shows that in a lot of businesses, we talk about the technicalities. Who has a better product? Who has a better returns? Who has better pricing? Who has this price rate, this insurance, this, that, a lot of the conversations about that. But at the end of the day, clients don't really care about that. Of course, they want good returns and they want low prices. I think this is, it's not an either or, but what everybody wants, me, you, everybody, is to feel important, is to feel that I count in this business. And at the end of the day, that's what the client experience is all about, is making your client feel important, feel like an individual, not a number, not something that's just going to be put into this line or whatever, is that you clearly understand me. You clearly want me to be engaged, and again, and you care about me. And that's what the client experience is. And it's something that not everybody spends their time thinking about, but every successful business that I know, they spend their time thinking about the experience.
I also think that when you concentrate on that, you just also feel better about your business because you have that secret sauce that a company has, that is their relationship with people, that one on one connection. Because you can offer the same exact services and the same exact products as everybody else, but if it's comes down to I like that person, I like that organization, I feel good when I chat with them, that makes all the difference, doesn't it?
It does, and as somebody who frequents restaurants a lot, as a paid entertainer, I'm always taking clients out and taking advisors out and going to a lot of different places. You can see the vast contrast. Like a restaurant, right? We all get the basic concept, right? You go into somewhere and they serve you food. Now, the difference on what you pay for that food is anywhere from, $2 for a hamburger to $1,000 steak. And what is the primary difference? The food could be somewhat of the difference, and I appreciate that. So that's a product, but it's mainly the places that make you feel like somebody. I go to this same steakhouse downtown, Jacobs, and I go there because I know everybody. They know me by name. They know what table I have. They know what I'm going to order. They know what I want. And as much as there's probably 1,000 restaurants in the GTA in the downtown core where I am. Um, I keep going back to the same spot because of that. And think about that in context of your own business. That's what you want, that level of loyalty with your clients.
Let's wrap it up here talking about our episodes, talking about some of our solo episodes that we've done throughout the years. I know one of your favorites is the best piece of advice you ever received. So tell us a little bit about episode 60 and why that's important to you.
Well, this really is the best piece of advice I have ever received, which is back when I was I'm going to call it, I say kid, I was a teenager. I grew up on a horse farm. My dad trained race horses, and I was at the racetrack working for one of the top trainers in all of North America. But as I watched this guy, he never actually did anything. It wasn't like my dad, who was always out busy working and, out mucking stalls, looking after horses. This guy just wandered in, talked to his team, looked at the horses, and yet he was very successful. So one day I talked to him and I asked him, what's the deal here? And he said, son, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. From the neck down, you might be worth a couple 100,000, but from the neck up, you're worth untold millions. Choose early which one you're going to be. And what he meant by that is what I call neck down work and neck up work. And neck down is something that needs physical attention. You have to do it. Neck up is intellectual work, strategy work, motivating people work, getting business idea work, solving problem work. And if you can figure out how to work with your brain rather than your body, as I said, there's untold millions ahead of you. And that's the best advice I've ever gotten. And I've taken it to some extremes. And one of the sayings that came out of that, and I've actually had people come back and say, oh, I listened to your podcast and I remember this piece of advice and I actually did it, which is every time you do something you hate, you deprive somebody else of doing something they love. And if you can keep that in mind, just focus on the things you love and outsource and delegate the things that you hate, life becomes pretty good.
So our time here is coming to an end, Chris. Let's wrap this up. Tell me what advice you would love to give advisors that are sitting here thinking about 2025 and wanting to make this the best year ever, build that big quest, build this big business. What would you suggest to advisors that are looking at the new year?
Well, I'll give them the advice that I gave this group of young advisors in Montreal after the conference. I said, if you want to be truly great in business, truly great, then you should really become obsessed with client experiences. You should think about constantly, how do I make each step of the client engagement better? How do I make each step of the review process better? How do I communicate better with my clients? And how do I engage with them more and more? If that becomes your obsession, and as you move through 2025, if you just become obsessed with your clients, I guarantee you will be successful. So on top of that, what I would encourage everyone to do is also take lots of time off. Great productivity comes to the rested mind. On top of that, travel exposes you to new ideas, new cultures, new foods. So I would continue to encourage you to take time off, travel, and enjoy your life.
Love that. Chris, thank you so much for taking time to chat today. I know we're going to have a lot more episodes coming up in the new year, some great conversations to be had, and really appreciate you chatting about the new year. And thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Matt. We got to have you on more often.
Be happy to do that. And by the way, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. If you're listening, make sure you subscribe in Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy holidays, Chris, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
Thank you, Matt, and happy holidays to you. Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.